Hey there, this is your host Brian, and I'd like to introduce our special guest today, Clarke Bishop of Tech Marketing Team. Clarke has been the owner and leader of several technology service companies, and he knows just how painful it can be to put in all the time and effort to educate yourself, to work hard, yet still fail to realize your business dreams. If you're the owner or leader of a technology service company, then it's highly likely that Clarke's been exactly where you are right now, and he knows how to answer all of these problems, and those answers will lead to marketing that really works, attracts new customers, increases profitability, and helps you focus on the most effective growth strategies that will help you get the most out of your business. In today's interview, our topic is going to be Who Cares About You? The Value of Uniqueness. Clarke, welcome and thank you so much for being with us today.
You bet, Brian. I'm glad to be here.
Oh, well, we're happy to have you. Clarke, since some of our listeners might be new about who you are, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Certainly. Well, as you mentioned in the introduction, I have been the owner and manager of technology service companies and have a lot of technology background myself. I guess I still think of myself as a technology guy more than anything else. But as a result of being in the technology services business, I remember how hard that was. And it was hard because what I didn't know how to do was how to reliably attract customers and reliably find new customers to help them find me. And that was very painful. It was painful to know that I was well educated, knowledgeable, and high customer service and really wanted to help customers and solve tough technical problems, but I didn't have enough work to keep busy. And so that led me to explore marketing, and I've really developed into quite the marketing wizard as a result. And I love to help technology companies and technology service companies find more customers, grow their business, increase their sales, and take better vacations.
And everyone can definitely use. I think especially that last one. Everyone, that's what they're thinking about when they start a business. They think about the freedom that they're going to get and the money that they're going to get, and providing for their families. And I bet it's a real system shock when they go into this and they know that they're good and they know that they have something better than the competition, but it seems like they fall flat on their face comparatively.
Yeah,
And
freedom is great, except when you don't have any money or any sales or any profits.
then I suppose that that in itself is detrimental to the freedom that people want, which is why they need the help that someone like you, an expert in your field and in marketing, has to offer.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's amazing. One of the things we see all the time with clients is that everybody thinks they're a marketing expert. And we do these 30-minute marketing tune-up calls to kind of review marketing with people. And it's amazing how people's eyes get wide and open up when they see all the opportunities and the things that they're not really taking advantage of.
Oh yes, and a lot of the people out there these days, in my opinion, in my experience, they get a lot of outdated marketing information. You know, they learn about a business from somebody who's owned a business for a long time, and they think, hey, if I just sink some money into this, then I'll be totally fine. I'm just going to get all the customers I need. And then because of shifting time, shifting attention, and the information age, uh, they don't get what they expect, and it's really disheartening to them. And then they start wondering, what am I doing wrong? What's wrong with my business? Maybe I'm not in the right industry. And I think there's a lot of questions that they're asking that aren't necessarily the right questions, but it makes them second guess themselves and definitely hesitate and wonder if their industry, if it's the industry itself that's the issue, when it's not at all. It's simply that they need to make the necessary tweaks in their own marketing campaigns in order to become successful.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And you're talking about outdated advice on the internet. It's to give you a geeky example, but then we've got a technology audience here. It's like wasting half a day trying to solve a technology or a technical problem, and what's happening is you're following the instructions very carefully for version 4.2, and then after wasting half a day, you discover, oh, things changed with version 4.3, and that's what we're running, and we have to do it differently. And it's like that on marketing. Google keeps changing the rules, everything keeps changing. And so if you're not really up on things, it's easy to chase down the wrong path.
Well, in that case, those people better have a strong desk because I think they're going to be hitting their heads on it. So, and I'm sure that's exactly where someone like you, with your skills, can really come in and alleviate a lot of the tension and the knots and the pressure. And in my experience, also, I found a lot of people online say even it's something, and there's lots of debate about something like article directories, for example, but there are lots of very professional, expert authority figures on article directories, and they give you valid information on everything you need to know. Could be plumbing, could be attorneys, home foreclosure, whatever you need. But then all of them get buried down in the mire because there's a lot of other people who know their marketing, who know how to use the system. And while these people are great at what they do, they don't understand the marketing aspect of just how the articles directories work and search engine optimization and what have you. And so once again, it's just these little tweaks that they could do that would skyrocket them to the top, so that not only are they visible to their customers, to their prospects, but that they're also a high quality authority figure, and they could be making money comparatively hand over fist if they had just made these adjustments.
Certainly, certainly, and it's even though even though there's a lot of the principles in marketing are the same from one group to the next, the actual execution and the things that really work well is different. So, you don't want to be working with a marketing agency or marketing consultant who's also working with a veterinarian and a beauty salon and a CPA and all these different kind of things. Find somebody who's focused. That's why we're focused just on technology service companies, because we get to find out what's happening in Seattle and use that in Boston and Chicago and Dallas and all over the country. So, because most of our clients have a specific geographical focus, they don't compete with each other, but we get to leverage all that learning and knowing what's working and applying our systems, and it really benefits everybody.
Oh, absolutely. So, since this topic is about the value of uniqueness and who cares about you, you as a business, you as a person, I'd like to ask, why do technology service firms need to be unique?
Well, let me ask you to think about something for a minute, Brian.
Mm.
Why, when you're out to buy something and it's something you haven't purchased before, it's not something that you quite know about, how do you decide? How do you choose? How do you make a choice? Do you pick the first option that comes along, or do you think are you a price buyer? Do you buy the lowest price item or the highest price item? Some people do buy the highest price, and or are you looking at quality or what seems to be quality or performance or specs or what do you look at?
Me personally, I definitely look for the highest value. And so I do know that there are some people who feel that, oh, it's the highest price, so therefore it must be the best. I will put in the time, I'll do my research, and I'll find the highest value, and that is what will help drive my purchase decision.
So if you think about that a little bit more too, the what makes so value is the stuff you get divided by the price, sort of like that, right?
Yes.
But you still have to decide what of the stuff you get is relevant. Do you care if it comes in blue, or maybe you don't care about the color because you're colorblind? There are things you care about and the things you don't care about. So how do you figure out what you care about?
Simply by how it pertains to whatever my need is. For example, a car. I can use Toyota as an example because I like Toyotas. I've driven Toyotas, and what made me buy those is, I guess, what you could call the value. It's reliable. It's less than some cars. It's more than other cars, but I don't need all the gadgets and gizmos. I don't need all the stuff that I don't feel that I'll use. I just want something reliable that's going to get me place to place that I'm not going to have to keep pulling back into the shop.
You bet. Well, here's the thing I want you and our listeners to think about. I would tell you that ultimately in that assessment of value, there's an emotional element. Now, you
Hmm.
might know that you care about the miles per gallon you get in the car, and that's a specification that can be explicitly measured, and the government measures it consistently, so it's a comparable measure. But ultimately, when it comes down to it, there's a very strong emotional component in how you feel about that particular car manufacturer and that particular car. Does that make sense?
Yes, very much so.
And have you ever heard of a part of your brain called the amygdala?
I have.
And that's also called the reptile brain sometimes because that's a very low level part of our brains that we share with much lower level animals like reptiles and so on.
Yes.
And interestingly, the amygdala sort of sits down in the base of your brain next to your spinal cord. And it's where a lot of things around emotions and feelings flow through that. So there's the big frontal part of your brain where you look at miles per gallon and compare 20 versus 18 versus 32. But then there's that feeling part down in the amygdala that tells you whether it's worth paying more for a few more miles per gallon. And there's some really interesting science. It doesn't happen very often because it's such a fundamental part of your brain, but there have been occasions where people have had a disease and had their amygdala removed or big parts of it removed, and they find they have very difficult times making any kind of choice or decision because they never know how they feel about things. Isn't that interesting?
That is very interesting. And so while it seems that uh, we as human beings, we think we're very rational, we think we make decisions based entirely on fact and, you know, principle of rationality, that really our primary driving forces are those that are emotional. Would that sound correct to you?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So here's how this applies to why I asked that question or your question about why should anybody care about you. It's that we've got to give our customers a reason to feel good about our company. And it's something that technology service companies do a particularly bad job of. It's everybody's talking about all their Microsoft certifications or the products they support or the different ways that or the different technologies they work with and all these things. And so I want to ask all our listeners to go take the Technology Services Google Challenge and enter in a keyword, the very broad keyword like IT services and the name of your town, or just leave the town off and just do IT services or managed service providers or software developers or cloud services or whatever you want to search on that's closest to you. And then start looking through who comes back in the search results. And click on those links, open them up in multiple tabs in your browser and look at them and try to see what are the real headlines that these people are saying. I did this recently, and things that come back are things like friendly and knowledgeable technology support. Well, gee, who doesn't say that? Or we are an extension of your IT workforce. Well, okay. Or flat rate IT service for small and mid-sized businesses. Well, at least they narrowed it down a little bit to small and mid-sized businesses. Or here's one I really like: cloud computing that makes dollars and cents is spelled with a dollar sign. Now that's cute, but it doesn't answer the amygdala question. It doesn't say why should I work with you. It doesn't say what's special about you, and it doesn't have any implied promise inside of it. So, I just see this over and over again with technology service companies. Way too much focus on the what's, the specs, and the software and the versions and the everything you do, and not enough on the why. Why should I work with you? Why should I care about you? Why should I even pay attention to you? So that's a huge problem. And the other one that's related to that is too much we, not enough you. If I'm a buyer, I care about me. I don't care about. Yeah, I see this copy on websites all the time where, we are the experts in Microsoft Exchange and email provisioning and data deployment, and we do this, and we've got 100 people that are certified in this, and we do that. None of that tells me about what your company is, but it doesn't tell you whether or not you connect to me and whether or not I should work with you. So the antidote for that is this thing called the USP, or unique selling proposition. It says who you are and why I should do business with you.
Hmm. So on that, well, on what you were saying, it sounds like, and I think people do this, whether subconscious or conscious, for a reason when they say, "Oh, well, we do this, we have this," and they try and position themselves as the experts and the authorities. So, in their mind, what they're doing is, well, I'm going to put myself up here on this sort of pedestal with these skills that this other person doesn't have, so they think that they need me. When in reality, that person might know that they need that service, which is why they're looking for it in the first place, but you're not catering to them, to their desire. So I think that perhaps instead of we're experts in, Microsoft, everything that ever existed Microsoft, and we have 100 experts on our team, then it could be rephrased in questions to say, well, do you have this concern? Is this your issue? Do you have a business that needs this many applications or this kind of service? If you want something if you want to be protected, if you want to be well taken care of, if you want to be provided for at all hours of the day, then we're here for you. Would that be a much better approach, would you say?
Yeah, it certainly helps a lot to do things like that. And it's one thing I should warn you and everybody about is that developing a USP is really taking it to the full USP. It takes some real work, and it tends to take a lot of time. It doesn't necessarily take a lot of hours, but you have to work on it a little bit and then come back to it and then work on it some more and then come back to it. So it can easily take several months or even 6 months to really nail down what's special about you and your company and what's your special promise. The other part that I hadn't really talked about as much is what's really the promise that's implied in working with your company. If you work with us, here's what you're going to get. Here's what's going to happen for you. And how do you back up that promise? How do you make sure you deliver on it? And how do you express it? And how do you back it up? All of those are essential parts of a USP. So it starts with doing things like you were saying, like asking the questions that a prospect, that if a prospect would answer, they would start to connect and see, but then taking it to the next level. Why you?
Hmm. So, uh, that being said, since clearly uniqueness is very important, why don't more internet technology companies really have a USP for themselves?
I think there's a few reasons. One of them is that it is really, it does really take some work. I like to tell the story about Mark Twain. He wrote a friend a letter, and in the letter he said, "I would have written you a shorter letter if I had had more time." So, in other words, communicating clearly and succinctly takes more work than just running off a quick letter. And so it does take some energy and effort to get to that level of clarity. The other thing about it is that it's really, I think it's really, I know it's hard for me sometimes in my business. You get so close to your own business that you just can't see yourself. And one of the other things that happens is we tend to take our own uniqueness for granted because we live with it all day, every day.
Hmm.
So we really don't understand or realize what's unique or special about us. Now, our customers know, the ones that we've got, um, because they've already figured it out, and plus they've been working with us. So, it just does take some work, and it does take some perspective. And there's a lot of I'll give you some specific things that you really ought to have in place as a very clearly defined target market. The other thing that comes up sometimes is personas. Who's the sweet spot person that you should be working with? You're working more with are most of your customers men or women, or what's their role in the organization? All those kind of things. What are the problems you really solve? This goes back to what you were saying about the kinds of questions. So, saying that you're an expert in Microsoft SharePoint or Macintoshes, well, what's the
Hmm.
problem that people have that's the solution to? And defining the problem helps you relate better to what it is your customers really want. You can ask your customers and your friends, what's unique about me? And people are afraid to do that because they're afraid that the answer is going to be, oh, I don't know, you were a little cheaper or something. But it's actually a wonderful practice to ask that kind of question, because you'll hear back from people, and it'll surprise you. The and the best thing you can do, although this is really hard and it takes some guts, but it really does make you stand out, is to create some proof or some sort of guarantee. So
Hmm.
instead of talking about how many nines of server availability you've got, back it up. If your server goes down, we'll pay you $100.
Oh,
You
I
know,
see what you're getting at.
yeah,
And that does create a unique selling proposition in itself, right there, just from the security standpoint. In your experience, would you say that a lot of people come to these websites and even they aren't quite sure what they want? They know what they need to look for generally, but it's very ambiguous in their own minds. So asking them these questions and them nailing it down to be able to say, oh, yes, that's what I need. Would you say that that is something that most people end up having to do, and that's also why they don't make a particular decision with a certain company, because even after they see what that company has, they don't know specifically themselves what they want.
that's right. They don't have enough of an idea. In the beginning, you talked about buying a car. Well, most of us have bought cars, and we know what that's about. But when
Hmm.
you start, it gets a lot harder if you're a non-technical person trying to hire an IT company to help them. It's a different, because they don't really know. They things like miles per gallon. Most of us really know what that is with a car. But when you start looking at technology service company and they start spouting off numbers, it can all sound like a bunch of gibberish, and it just scares us, or it
Oh,
scares the prospect.
absolutely. And if they were so technologically inclined, then there's a chance that they wouldn't be coming to you in the first place.
Exactly, exactly.
So, since we have a little bit more time, so would you mind giving us some examples of good unique selling propositions?
Well, a couple that everybody has heard, and they're sort of the classic examples of USPs, but Federal Express, when it absolutely positively has to be there overnight.
That is a great
Everybody
one.
knows that. Everybody understands that's the promise of FedEx. And in fact, if I'll ask you this question, and everybody else is listening too, that if you think about when you really have to make sure something goes somewhere, aren't you a little bit more likely to send it FedEx than some other way?
Yes, it gets stuck in your head.
And that's what they're known for, when it really absolutely positively has to be there. Now, most of the time it doesn't absolutely positively have to be there. So, we'll send things whatever's most convenient. But when it's really got to be there, then we automatically think of FedEx. Here's another example that everybody knows: Domino's Pizza. Hot pizza to your door in 30 minutes or less, or it's free.
Hmm.
Who everybody knows that's what Domino's is all about, is pizza delivery.
Yes.
and that they've got that 30-minute guarantee. So for technology companies, it's sometimes you can find a vertical focus, a specific, we are the IT firm for chiropractors, or for chiropractors and veterinarians, or whatever the combination is. It's got to make sense. It does not like you can just have a vertical focus for the sake of having one. There's got to be, but if you think about it, veterinarians and chiropractors, for example, both have some similarities. They both have to schedule appointments. They do have patients. Their patients are a little different sorts, but you could find some similarities between those. Another example is a gender or an ethnic focus. In a lot of offices, the real, especially for smaller companies, the real technology decision maker might be a woman who's an office manager, and might be, this is kind of a stereotype, but it's got some truth to it, that might be uncomfortable with technology. So why not have a very female-friendly USP and approach to things? Is it okay if I give away a big secret?
No.
You,
Why don't you tell me, Clarke?
if you're targeting women, why not bring them a rose every now and then?
Uh-huh.
All of a sudden, roses are not very expensive, but if you become known as the guys who always show up with a flower, then all of a sudden it changes how everything, it positions you in your mind, or in the prospect's mind. And you better believe that lady who's the office manager is going to go tell all her friends about the IT company that brings her flowers.
It's different, and it's definitely memorable. And
That,
like you said, it caters to the emotional side, and that's what people need. And I think, and I hope that after the people who are listening to this, that they really start to understand the importance of emotion, of having the emotional connection, because they might think, oh, well, Rose sounds kind of corny or stupid. Of course, you're just giving that as an example, but it's when you connect to them on that deeper level that they really start to feel that you're somebody different. And a veterinarian and chiropractic, the fact of the matter is, when you say that, it's still a focus. And there's a lot of people who think, when you ask them, you say, well, who does your service benefit, or who could it benefit? And they say, well, everyone could benefit from what I have. And then they try to target everyone, and then they end up falling, and their business usually goes under, because you can't start by targeting everybody. I'd like to give a quick example for everybody, and maybe they know this, but Facebook, which is now used by just about everybody, it started out simply between I believe it was Ivy League colleges.
exactly.
And it expanded out to standard colleges, and then just out to the general public. So as long as you have a focus, and then you can expand outward after there, but you can't go from everybody and then try and focus down. It doesn't work that way.
Even more to the point with Facebook, they created a scarcity with that, because you had to have an .edu email address in the early days of Facebook. So you couldn't get it even if you wanted it. So by the time they opened it up to a broader audience, they'd already achieved some critical mass, and people were clamoring to participate.
Oh, absolutely. And there you go. You already have a built-in audience. So chiropractors and veterinarians, built-in audience. They have friends who aren't chiropractors and veterinarians, and eventually your business is growing outwards.
Yeah, or maybe chiropractic veterinarians too, get your dog adjusted.
That's true. You could do that. So we are really approaching our time limit here, Clarke. And I have to say, this is very fantastic. I would love to keep talking, but we do have to wrap things up on this end. So if you're listening to this interview and you'd like to learn more about how to identify and fix the marketing mistakes in your technology business, Clarke has generously offered a free 30-minute marketing tune-up call, especially for listeners of this interview. In this tune-up call, Clarke will help you identify what might be the biggest holes in your marketing strategy, as well as the biggest opportunities for additional profit in your business. Spots are limited and will be made available on a first-come, first-served basis, so if you're interested or even just curious to learn more, then you're going to want to sign up for one of these spots and reserve a free one-on-one marketing tune-up call with Clarke at no cost. To do this, visit techmarketingtuneup.com. Once again, that's techmarketingtuneup, all one word, .com. Thank you so much again for being with us here, Clarke.
You bet. Thanks, Brian. It was fun.
Excellent. Well, you take care and have a wonderful day.